Call the meeting to order for the December 12th edition of the Technology Commission. We'll rise for the pledge. Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Thank you.
I guess I'll call the roll on behalf of you guys tonight. Sean Campus.
Present.
Kurt Johnson.
Here.
Greg Lewis.
Present.
Mike Malani.
Present.
John McCannon. William Bell. Ed Giron.
Our first order is number 2018-0840, approval of the meeting minutes. Are there any questions or comments or changes to the meeting minutes?
I know the meeting minutes are difficult to hear without turning up your volume quite a bit. They're still there, so it just takes a little bit more to listen to them. Next time we'll try something different, maybe with the iPhones like you recommended, Mike, and just use that instead.
Right. And the text was looked like a brief summary of what we had discussed, and if there's any questions, we can always.
The main vote was to go every other month with that meeting. So
Correct.
when it was confirmed and approved, so that's why we're here tonight.
Yes. So if I could, if there's no questions, a motion to approve the meeting minutes.
I move to approve the meeting minutes as entered.
I concur.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And all opposed? All right, motion carries, and we made it through the meeting minutes. All right. Okay, all right. The next item up is 2018-0835, the discussion around CNG fuel alternatives. We can weigh in on our perspectives and insights, and the use of alternative fuels for village vehicles. I know this was a topic that the mayor had brought to our attention and wanted on an agenda, and I believe there was somebody else that said they were interested. I don't remember, Greg, if it was you or if it was maybe William Bell that said he was interested in discussing this, and I think he's not here tonight,
he's
which is
not here
great.
tonight.
I did a little research as far as what we've looked at in the past in the village, and there was looked like it must have been the end of 2016, beginning of 2017, some research, and what it looked like it was the use of propane for village vehicles, and I think it was mainly focused on the police department. I didn't get a chance to read the entire briefing from the meeting. So one, I don't know if it was ever piloted or if we ever decided to move forward with it.
The Public Works Department was in charge of that effort. They brought in a third party to provide the costs of the conversion of the vehicles, and they were going to start with the police vehicles first. the addition of the tanks, the warranty, respect to, the Ford Interceptors, how does that work? So that company actually took ownership of all that at that time.
Okay.
It was never really passed. It was never voted yes or no. I think it just kept getting tabled and left as discussion only.
Okay, so it never made it out of committee then? Okay. Yeah, because it looked like there was pretty substantial research to the point we got to a proposal, but
Correct.
never made it out. Okay.
And I mean, there's visits down to other municipalities that do use the CNG or propane for their vehicles. I think there are very few cons with respect to using it. I think it was just being able to pull the trigger and everyone
Sure.
agreeing that that's the way they were going to go.
And, without a lack of the rest of the group here today, this may be a relatively short discussion, but, there's several different alternative fuels just to natural gas. There's hydrogen, there's ethanol, biodiesel. And I believe that we use biodiesel today for some of our vehicles.
I'm not aware of that. We use biodiesel.
Not aware? Okay.
Just regular diesel.
Just
I don't know
regular
that we use
diesel,
any
not
biodiesel.
okay. So, I don't want to, neglect the rest of the group and, let's start handing out action items around this and start doing any kind of studies in it without the people that wanted to talk about it.
We could table it for another meeting.
We could table it for another time. This will be the third time we've pushed it out, but I agree that we could push it forward. I would ask that the next time we bring it out, if maybe we could do a little bit more research, have some insight into it coming in, and then have a more guided discussion. Did anybody get a chance to look into anything regarding this when you saw it on the agenda, or was this something that wasn't of much interest? Or
I haven't done anything with it or looked into it at all.
so maybe we take a few minutes, we have a good discussion around it, and then we decide if this is something we want to pursue further and actually do any kind of studies, similar to what we're doing for other initiatives, feasibility, cost benefit, things like that. So, okay, we'll go ahead and, close this item for today
Next
and
meeting
then
agenda?
move it to the next meeting. The next item is 2018-0836, the solar power for village facilities. This was another item that was pushed from our last meeting. We would have been there another hour if we wanted to talk about these two. Now, this is another one of those that was, put on the agenda, and I'm not sure who did. And we wanted to make sure that we did discuss it. And it also might have been another one that it was the mayor and William, because I know the mayor had brought it up. Because Greg, I don't think this was you or were you interested in the solar power? Was it?
It wasn't me. Unfortunately, I
I
wasn't.
think John was interested in doing
Unfortunately,
it.
I
Was it
wasn't-
John? Okay.
I wasn't at the last meeting, so.
Okay. Yeah, no, we didn't discuss it at the last
Yeah.
meeting. This was something that had came up early on as a possible topic, and I just don't remember who
Who brought it?
had brought it up. And like I said, it might have been William or possibly John, but I know also the mayor brought it up. So this one I did not get a chance to dive into as far as, other communities that have moved to solar power for their village buildings. I know that right now, it seems to be towards the end of the year for residential, we seem to have a ton of them coming in. And I believe, is that due because the incentives are getting ready to expire for it? So everybody is coming and trying to get theirs put in?
I do believe it's because of the incentives, but I think the firm that's been and I don't know what the name of the firm was, that's been populating themselves in the area, has made some good headway and traction into getting residents to switch over to alternative solar power, at least for those days when it's best. I think from a village perspective, to attack this is how we did with the roundabout and how we did with the roof, the green roof project, was look for grants for funding. And I think that's the way you back into this and say, hey, being in Village, you have this much grant money available to you to, implement solar power at your facilities. Now, keep in mind, our facilities, I do not believe, and don't quote me on this, but I do not believe we pay for power for our facilities. Being a municipality, we don't pay for power. But if we're reducing the footprint, I think someone talked about it at the one meeting, it's probably the right way to go.
Yeah, and I believe you're correct, but again, we won't quote, but I believe that anything that is not revenue generating, and it's a municipal building, that you don't pay electricity on, and that was the thought of like, okay, well, what benefit do we have at that point? Well, it's the right thing to do for the environment, it's the right thing to do moving forward. Can we save energy one way or the other? And I think that was the way that we would want to look at it, but, it needs to be, some way of either being self-funded or, being able to, a grant of some sort.
And usually grants aren't 100%
Right.
for any number percentage-wise, but the better the percentage, the more likely the project could get done.
So I think that was kind of like the background of why that was brought up, and, why I believe the mayor wanted to talk about it is it something that we can show that we're, environmentally responsible, and find a way to, minimize the cost associated with it.
So if the buildings are non-revenue generating, they don't have to pay for electricity. So what are we talking about, like Sportsplex and things like that?
I don't know about Sportsplex, because that is a revenue generator.
That is a revenue
Right.
generator.
Village Hall is not, Public Works is not, Rec Admin across the way probably is, but Civic Center probably is, FLC, don't know. But a majority of our buildings, water towers, things like that, they're not revenue generators, so.
I think with solar, there's so many companies out there that are trying to do it now that most of these guys that are installing it will do it pretty much for free. And they'll put the equipment in, they'll, take care of all the upfront costs. And they, in turn, go back and get the rebates from the government and get them back to them somehow. I just know this because I'm involved in a project at a condo that I own, and they put up $400,000 to put it in, and basically, over the course of 10 years or so, our costs stay about the same, but after that, they drop dramatically. And they even paid to redo the roof and everything else like that. So I think these companies are willing to work with you if you want to pull the trigger, and it's kind of a no-brainer where if they're paying for the equipment up front and there's no additional cost, that you can almost have it done for free.
So I think that's something that you would package up and bring to, the committee members and say,
Right.
hey, we got a great opportunity. We, talking through it through the Technology Commission, and then
Right.
bringing it to board, doing a discussion only. Here's what our ROI is on it, or here's what the payback is on it. Same thing, but the net effect, lowering our carbon footprint, lowering our consumption and reliance on commercial power. There's a whole picture you can put there. But we got to put those hard numbers out there.
Right. Yeah, just because we're not paying for electricity doesn't mean we're not using it, and I think that is the key, right? If we can save somehow by leveraging it, I think that's, so we're talking about smart cities and, becoming, green with technology. I mean, it's definitely the right way to head.
It may also bring us to a LEED certification for our buildings too. You never know, right?
Right. So I don't know, I know we have a small group today, but if any of you are interested, you don't have to decide today, but if anybody be interested in doing a little diving into this, let me know, send me an email, think about it. We don't have to make a decision today, but I'll also reach out to the rest of the team.
Yeah, I think for both of these discussions we've had, we see if we can get someone to kind of spearhead.
Yeah, exactly. Same thing we're doing with some of our other initiatives. It's like maybe we also need somebody financially to look at it, from an economic perspective, how it can either benefit or improve things. So, we could do something, cross committee or something like that if we need to. I think what we need now is more of a, what do we want to focus on with these, and then, then put a plan together, and then if we need additional help, kind of bring people together.
It's a
But,
good hybrid between the tech and the E EDAP,
right,
right?
because, the one thing, we want to do is we want to make sure that, the commissions are being utilized for what we're here for, right? And that's, if we can start creating some of these initiatives, I mean, that's the purpose of having a committee or a commission, to come up with new ideas, present them to the board, and either say yes or no, right? So, this is definitely one, I think, probably even over the CNG, that could probably be easier to push through and justify than, refitting a entire fleet of vehicles, So yeah, I'll take that as an item for me to, send out an email, let people know that we'll probably talk about this again at an upcoming meeting. Let's do a little research. We can have a bigger discussion, talk about, the idea that, if we can, come up with a cost benefit, that we'll bring it.
Kurt,
farther.
does the firm that did your condo association, do they do other government, do they do government?
I don't know. I wasn't really involved in the sourcing as far as the people that they went with, and it's also in Hawaii. So I don't know if that firm is national or what, but they had 3 firms that are really, really willing to come in and do whatever we wanted.
Wow.
And it was kind of a no-brainer. I mean, especially there. So, yeah, it's something I think that, the only thing that I've heard about solar around here, and especially with residential, is there's a lot of pushback when it comes to people putting panels on the front of their houses. So you have to be like on a certain facing street and things like that when it comes to residential. I'm not so sure it would happen in convention or, commercial buildings or anything like that. But, we can do it, and we can offer to, a company to come in and say that, we'd be willing to, recommend you to some of the other buildings that are in the village. It might be a good program to at least offer to, some of the businesses that are here.
I mean, the plans that have been submitted are very interesting, just not knowing what it's like and the amount of square foot that they take up on the roof, but it doesn't seem like there's been any complaints or issues with respect to what it's going to look like. I think our buildings are tall enough where they're pretty much out of, eyesight of most, so, and I think it's a simple,
Yeah.
And maybe,
simple to do.
maybe we bring somebody in from planning commission, then maybe to help us, people that understand the building codes,
Right.
That can actually tell us what is good for commercial. So,
And the technology is also changing. It's, did you see the new roofs where it's actually the shingles? And you really, from what I've seen on videos and photographs, you really don't know the difference unless you're really up on top and you can see the sensors. I don't know what the costs are related to that. What I'm reading is the industry's slowing down. Mm-hmm. And I think part of that is somewhat related to incentives, government incentives may be reduced here. But, I've heard similar stories with some people I know where with condos or larger buildings, and they got it installed for nothing, in essence.
Yeah, yeah.
So I think it's really worth pursuing.
okay. All right, well, any other comments on this for tonight?
I think.
If not, then I will, I'll make sure that I follow up, send an email out to everybody, let them know we'll be discussing this further, and then, ask for somebody who'd be interested in kind of spearheading this initiative if we decide to dive deeper into it. So, all right. Well, thank you. All right, moving on to the next item, 2018-0837, update on cross-commission activities between the Recs and Park Advisory Board and the Economic Development Advisory Board. Kurt, I put this on here for you. I thought you might want to give an update to the team as far as our meeting with the working group, and talk about the platform that you found and, what our next steps are.
So basically, the idea, I know that Frank's got a copy, I don't know if you guys got a copy of,
And actually,
kind of what the app
I think, Sean, were
kind
you,
of are trying to do in a,
I don't know if either of you
in a
were at the
summer.
last meeting.
Mike's got
right?
one of those.
He's got one?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, you guys they weren't at the last meeting, so maybe give a brief overview of kind of how this got started.
So basically, what we're looking to do is try to be more technology driven. And my idea was to try to get some type of app developed for the village where we can get people more engaged with the parks and rec departments and doing things that are free in the village or, at minimal cost to people. And that as a way to get them to do that, you can incentivize them with, possibly getting some of the merchants in the community involved. If, let's say, they went out and did a fitness challenge or something like that, then you can go through this whole process in an app, and if you complete what you're supposed to do in a fitness challenge, then you might get a coupon off at, sporting goods store or something like that. It's just a way to probably get started with making us look more technology driven, and I think that it could be a good way to get people to volunteer to do things, and a good way to get people out to the parks, and it's a fairly simple thing to do, I think. I've checked with a couple vendors as far as what it would take to launch the app and the costs and things that are involved, and we're still at the initial stages with that, but I took a demo that I got from one of the vendors, and it took me about 5 minutes to put together one of these scavenger hunt type things that, you could program in a back end and make it flow through, and I had 5 challenges in there in a matter of 5 minutes to have the app. So the technology's there, it's ready to go. They do everything that we would want to do. Just as a sideline here, the challenges, we can do barcoding, we can do geolocation, we can do photo challenges, we can do any kind of thing as far as the app goes, and that's all built into it. And they even have a way to upload vendor coupons or incentives or 20% off and things like that, and to have advertising and banners and stuff like that in the app already. And the cost isn't real high, depending on, you can have as many people as you want signed up for it, and then they charge you pretty much for people that go through and start to use the challenges that are in there. So, talking to them at length as far as how this could possibly grow, the one vendor is very willing to work with us as far as cost goes and try to get it developed. And I think this is something that we can get it to work on a small, basis. We could develop it into something a lot bigger. I mean, we could turn it into a ride-sharing program or, community service type thing. I mean, if you go and you volunteer at the food pantry, you can get, discounts on grocery stores or whatever it is. So we have the economic development. How many people we have?
We just have one right now.
One right now, and then we have 2 people from the Parks and Rec.
Yeah, 2 from Parks and Rec,
Yeah.
Felicitas Cortez and John Lawler from
So-
Parks and Rec.
So basically, we put together what we need to do in order to get the app going. And we have a couple of people that have volunteered to do a few of the things. The different stages that we need to do is we really need to figure out the feasibility of developing the app and what needs to be done with it. We've already looked into that, and I think it's pretty simple. The capabilities, I think they can do pretty much everything that we need them to do. The cost, we would have to just get proposals from 2 or 3 different companies to make sure that the costs are in line for what we want to do. And then we would have a merchant development team, which is basically somebody going out and talking to merchants that might be interested in doing this and saying, what kind of, what do you think you'd be willing to spend to get involved in this or to, be a sponsor with it. And Lisa Tiz volunteered to do that. She said she'd be more than willing to meet with Orland Park businesses. Well, she's with the chamber, so that's kind of easy for her. And then, so moving forward, she's going to go out and talk to some of these businesses and see what kind of packages she could put together, and what kind of pricing we could charge for it to see if we can kind of cover the cost on it. And then we have asset development, where what locations we will want people to visit, and kind of challenges we'd want to put together. We could have festivals, parks, the lighting ceremony, we could have the skate rink, we could have even people's Christmas lights in their front yard. If you drove by there and you click it off in the app, then you could, get points for doing whatever you wanted, go in and buying Christmas lights at American Sales or whatever it is. So somebody needs to research what locations we would have to go to or want to go to, and what would be the involved with those, whether it be barcoding or geolocating them. One of my initial ideas was to put some barcodes at the parks, on the trails, so if you're doing a fitness challenge, you come along to the middle of the park and you hit a barcode, and then you go to the end to kind of prove that you were there and, give you something to do. I think the cost in doing all that is going to be very, very reasonable as well. And then we need to look at who's going to be responsible to maintain and update the app. We had mentioned that we could probably maybe get somebody to volunteer to do that, or maybe somebody that is looking to do community service hours, maybe a high school student, internship, something like that. It's very easy to program, very easy to do. I think we just need to come up with new ideas, so we'd probably need a team to come up with new challenges and try to keep it fresh. And then how would the reward system work for that? And then I think we would have to have some kind of team to put together, if we decided to go with it, how to advertise it and how to get people to use it. So you'd have to promote it, whether around Christmas time or summertime, 4th of July, or whatever it is. I think you'd have to really try to get people involved in, having a big launch for it, and then get them involved, and it would be a benefit to both the sponsors and to, driving the app and making it a success. You don't want to put it out there and have it the same for for 6 months, where people are going to go through it and say, I looked at it, I did it, then we're done. I think it's got to change on a weekly or a monthly basis or something like that. It's got to be fresh all the time, and there's going to be some costs or a lot of work involved in probably updating that, but it has to be something that you plan for, to start, and then long-term. You got to have somebody that's going to be in place to make sure it's taken care of, and it's always going to be renewed and fresh. So right now we have 4 people, I think, that are working on it. So we're just taking pieces of the checklist I put together, and I think we're going to try to have a meeting in January to see where we're at with all of the tasks that are involved here. So that's pretty much it.
Couple things I'll add to that too is, the sponsorship part of this, I think, is really what's going to be key, because one of the things that we need to do due to budget constraints and trying to spend as little money as possible is how do we make this self-funding, right? So if we can gather enough from sponsorships and figure out a way to do that, that one, put some skin in the game for the companies that are willing to sponsor it. So 2, maybe we can turn it back on the businesses to make sure their content is updated. So give them access to update their promotions that they're willing to put out there, update their hours, update their location if they move, whatever it is. That way the burden isn't on the village to maintain the data, it's on the people that are looking to do the advertising. But, you know, that has its challenges too, so.
So, you know, we did the Explore 64 app, I think, I presented with the metrics around that. And that was sponsored, you know, solely by trustee Dan Calandrella and his law firm. We did spend about 2 weeks of staff time to get it ready, prepared, all the diligence behind it, visit all the parks, come up with things to do in those parks, you know, geotag those areas in the parks. So it did take a considerable amount of time. So just to go out and visit those locations, and get everything to, you know, collected. We did discuss doing QR codes. We thought there'd be some vandalism, so we didn't want to go and print signs because of the opportunity of vandalism.
Yeah.
So we didn't do that. We just did the geofencing or take a picture on the wooden train, you know, take a picture. One family, I think, did it in one day. You know, they were so excited about it. And what they ended up receiving was the sports, or the rec department donated a family 3-month membership to the Sportsplex. You know, that type of thing. So it was good because it got a lot of interest in the parks. Some of the staff had never been to all the parks in the village, so it was really nice to get the staff out there and say, holy God, I didn't even know we had this park, you know. But it was widely receptive at first, and then it trickled out within the first 2 or 3 weeks. Literally just dropped off the face of the earth, even though with the promotions and things like that. So you really got to be creative and keep it fresh. And it does take a lot to maintain it. It does take a lot.
Yeah, and I think that you have to come up with different, it just can't be visiting the parks, you know, and it has to be other things that you can do, whether it be volunteering or whether it be, you know, ride sharing or, you know, going and picking up somebody's groceries for them and then getting some kind of incentives with it. I think you really have to get the word out. That's a good thing, and that the prizes are worth doing.
Right.
Or
The incentives
it's
are,
worth it, you know. The few people I've talked to, especially people with, you know, younger kids, say that would be great. They're always looking for something to do on the weekend. They're always looking for something to get out and, you know, get them out of the house and instead of sitting in front of the computer. So if we can make it exciting and fresh and have the rewards that are good enough where people are talking about it and saying, hey, it's really cool. We went and, you know, we just went to the parks all day and we got a free meal out of it. That's what's going to drive it, I think. If you make it boring and you get 2% off something, nobody's going to want to do it. So in talking to the merchants, that's something that's really got to be kind of driving it, that, you know, this is not going to be, you know, just a one and done thing. You have to be involved with it. You have to want people to come in. You have to, I mean, advertising's not cheap either. So, you know, the app itself, I think, to get started, it'd only be, you know, between $500 or $1,000 a month to probably the costs for the company to do it. You know, the behind the scenes of hosting and things like that. But then you have to have the people that are, you know, updating it, and you might have to pay for some advertising. You might have to do all that stuff. But I would think we could, there's ways to work around that. I think with the number of businesses that are in the community, we can certainly fund it. I mean, it's not a...
One of the other things too is, you know, one of the use cases I think of that's, you know, this would be great for is the scavenger hunt. You know, when I guess the last scavenger hunt, it was a piece of paper. We had to limit it to 100 people or 1,000 people or something like that. I thought we had
No,
turned
the
people
Explore
away.
64 was an app. It was an app.
So
People
the
could
Explorer
download it.
64 was the scavenger hunt the last time? Okay, because I was under the impression that it was pretty much manual and people had to go to a bunch of different places. They did their thing and then get checked off or whatever. And then, okay, so it was actually an app that was driving it.
We
Okay.
kept it at 100 because of the cost.
Okay, is that what the cap was, 100, because of the cost? Okay. Because if there was a way that we could expand that to more people, maybe it's a, you know.
To Kurt's point, yeah.
Yeah,
you
they
confirm
said
that.
they're more than willing, and so the way it
Right.
works, you can get as many people signed up for the app as you want, and I'm not sure if they all do it the same way, because I still have some calls out to people, but the people that actually sign up for the challenges, that's when they start getting billed for that month. And then at the end of the month, they can drop off.
Okay.
You know, if people don't use the challenge within a certain number of days, you could drop them off and then bring somebody else on. So somebody has to manage that portion of it. But I think as we move along here, you know, getting a couple kids from Sandburg or the high schools in the area to come in, and especially people that are involved in the computer, you know, find some place that they can sit down and just work on this thing. And, you know, if they make a mistake, it's not the end of the world, but you have to have a little bit of oversight there. But it'd be simple for them to do, and it would be, you know, community service hours or, you know, an internship for somebody over the summer to work on it and pull all this together. You know, if you keep it fresh and you keep on changing it with the seasons, you know, 4th of July, you know, the Halloween, the Christmas lights we have out here, the skating rink, the concerts and stuff that they might do, all that stuff, I think you have to just keep on coming up with new ideas and maybe have a team that meets and tries to, you know, have fresh ideas once a month, whatever it is for the app.
Sandburg has a phenomenal technology program.
Yeah.
I mean, those kids that come out of there, they come out knowing how to work with Cisco equipment,
Yeah.
you know, day one. You know,
Yeah.
I mean, they really do. They probably have a very good, you know, graphic arts program. There's a lot to offer there. And there's also retired folks, right? There's folks who have been in that industry and don't want to have to really tear themselves away from it anymore, but they don't have to work as hard either. So they also may be willing to step in and help out too.
So maybe doing a beta program or something like that would be the way to start it, you know, and say, listen, we're gonna launch it. We're gonna say this is the way it is, and then if people like it, you know, and if you want to volunteer to be involved with it, you can do that. Once we get kind of the basic, you know, all the basics down of what we think it's going to cost, and you know, what some of the challenges might be to start with, then we can start looking at, you know, who's going to actually volunteer or be able to have the time to, you know, push it through and maintain it like we need it to be maintained. So hopefully, you know, we'll meet again. I think I'll probably send out an invitation for some time in the middle of January to meet again for just this app development. And then at the next technology commission, we can, meeting, we can go over where we're at with it and see how we're progressing with it.
And yeah, we'll still be, you know, looking for another volunteer, because looking at the things that Kurt has on his list of things to do, there's probably quite a few before we can come up to actually have a good justification for this. So, you know, I'll put the ask out there again, and then I'll, you know, send out an email asking if anybody would be interested. And also, you know, if we need somebody from economic development, we still have the room for one more person from them. And if we need more involvement from Parks and Rec, we have room for one more person there as well. However, I don't know if we necessarily need 7 people working on this either. So depending how big this becomes, we have the flexibility that we can do it. So I'm kind of, you know, playing the EDAB person and the technology commission person, but my goal is to, you know, kind of let Kurt run with this. I'll be here to help support him and help him get what he needs, but for the most part, I want to let him run with it, and then, you know, eventually we'll find the other volunteers. So.
Keeping it fun and keeping it fresh is key.
Yes.
You know?
That's it. I mean, if you're going to launch it and you're not going to maintain it, then you might as well not even launch it, because it's going to die on the vine. You know, you got to keep it fresh, and you got to continually go to, you know, the sponsors and say, you know, what's the impact, how's it working, and then if you get it launched and it is successful, you can take this idea and you could probably say other communities in the area, they might be interested in it or whatever it is, which would, you know, probably be good for whoever we choose to develop or host the app. They might come back to us and say, listen, you know, you've given us a lot of business, and now we can start cutting the costs on what you guys have or whatever it is. So once we get, I think we have enough people to get the basics, you know, the development checklist kind of hashed out. It might take more than, you know, a couple months to do that, but once we have a better thing together or a better idea together at the next technology commission, which would be, what, February?
Yes.
Yeah, I think we'll have most of this covered by then.
Great. Well, any other comments or?
Yeah, the only thing I would say, I think the key to the whole thing is the merchants and the advertisers.
Yeah, well, you think of what it costs to just put a simple ad in the paper. I mean, if it's $200 or $300 for a small ad, if you get somebody to come up with, $500 a month to do this, and then the cost of the app is $1,000 a month, and you get a dozen merchants to do it, you have some money to advertise it and push it, and, if you have to pay somebody to kind of maintain it, or, somebody comes in for a few hours a week or a month or whatever it is, if you can get the money, if you make it worth it for the vendors, if somebody's seeing a lot of foot traffic come in because of it, and I could see a lot of businesses that would benefit, ice cream stores or, sporting goods stores or, grocery stores, whatever it is. I think it's got to be, you have different challenges, tailored towards different things. And you can have as many challenges as you want, and you can make it as big as you want. So I think volunteerism too would be a great way to track people, that are volunteering at the food pantry, and say, you being a grocery store, you want to volunteer, or you want to, donate food, or you want to, give somebody something for volunteering, and then we'll put your name on the app, and, it's cheap advertising is what it is.
Cool, thank you.
Well, thank you. Good conversation. Our next agenda item would be 2018-0839, the NUMA real-time traffic sensors. I believe this is Greg's discussion. So.
Yeah, Frank asked for someone to do a little research on Numina. Numina, just background, is a relatively young company. It's been around for about 3 years, and the service and the product that they're offering is a technology that allows municipalities and other organizations to monitor traffic patterns, whether it's pedestrian, whether it's vehicle, bus, truck traffic, bicycle, and their original projects they've been involved with have been really involved. It has been there to look at ways to reduce traffic accidents, traffic fatalities, but also to get a sense on real traffic patterns, both in terms of pedestrian and vehicle. The technology basically works with, it uses imaging, and their devices can be placed on telephone poles, utility poles. They actually I couldn't get the information to share because it's still, they're working with the City of San Francisco. In one case, they just have this device sitting in a window of a building, and it's overseeing a major square. It's a major intersection for various bus routes and truck routes. And so in essence, what the device does, it takes periodic images, and a lot of the processing is actually done locally in the device to minimize the amount of bandwidth necessary to transmit the information back and to collect the data. So let me get back a little bit more about the company. As best as I can tell, everything has been kind of tests or pilots. Their largest test was in Jacksonville. And interestingly enough, this entire test was funded by a grant, and it had nothing to do with traffic. It was a grant related to health. And the premise is that in the city of Jacksonville, people that, lower income people, tend to be at a larger health risk because they're out on the streets, they're out walking more or less. And so the idea here was to gather information about it. So it was totally funded by that. They're in about 25 different intersections throughout Jacksonville. And I did provide a slide that kind of demonstrates how it works. There is a slide that's kind of interesting where they have this device located at a train station. And if you take a look at it, it uses heat maps to show basically pedestrian and vehicle traffic. And in this particular case, what's of interest here is nobody uses the crosswalk. Everybody cuts across the street. And so that's the kind of information in terms of changes to traffic planning. Their sweet spot, by the way, is not really vehicle. I think what they're targeting is pedestrian, and I know, Frank, you mentioned such things as traffic throughout the parks.
Bike paths, things of that nature.
Bicycle paths, that really is their sweet spot. And what's nice about it is you can put one of these devices and collect data about a particular location, and it's relatively easy to move it to a new location. So in terms of what they actually provide, is they provide kind of a standard dashboard, which they admitted needs work. As any startup, they developed something. So there's a sample of a dashboard for Jacksonville. And with that dashboard, you can basically click on and look at any one of those particular locations that they're at. In terms of their presentation, they also had a lot of information customized about each location, but that was all custom programming work. So my evaluation is that this is a work in progress. And where they've been at, it got its test locations, Jacksonville. They're at this one location in the city of San Francisco. Apparently they're doing a little bit with the city of New York and St. Louis at this point. I think they're very interested in looking at opportunities. They're clearly a small startup. The gentleman I spoke with was the head of operations, and he was the '1 employee. So when I reached out, he gave me a call. In summary, it's kind of an interesting, the approach they take in terms of management and the heat map concept, where you can really see what's going on. In the case of the San Francisco location, traffic from everywhere. It's a big square, a lot of buses, and what they're finding also from that is just the traffic flow where people park, where they're not supposed to park, where people are walking, again, not following the crosswalk, and the issues that results in. They're finding issues where, in this particular case, trucks just stop there and wait there because they're waiting for traffic conditions to improve, and they're parked there and they're really tying up the whole intersection. So they're learning a lot from it. Again, what these municipalities are going to do with it, it's unclear. As far as pricing, I actually sent out a price list. They basically have a charge per sensor, and it's basically 6,000 setup fee for sensor at volume 1 or 2. And that setup doesn't include the actual installation. All that is their setup. So in terms of actual labor to go out and install it, that's outside of their domain. On an ongoing monthly basis, there's essentially a data fee, an ongoing hardware support fee for each sensor. And the data service fee includes the actual data transmission costs and access to that data. There's an API that's provided, and I think that what they've really got here is, I would say, a kind of a bare bones startup system. And the idea is they have an API, and you can use that for data feeds for either build your own or pay them for that development. So any questions? In terms of how much time I spent on this, took me a while to get through to them or actually schedule a time with them. They did give me about a 40-minute demo of it on the phone. But to be honest, they spent 15 minutes trying to get Google Hangouts to work so they could do the demo.
Definitely.
So this is a very high-level analysis I've done here at this point. I haven't done a really deep dive into any of it until I got a sense from the rest of the committee here, what their thoughts are on it. And
So where would we be looking to implement something like this? Like for traffic patterns as far as LaGrange Road, things like that, or?
Well, originally, this Paul, did you talk to Paul? See the guy you talked to by any chance? The contact I forwarded?
I'm sorry?
Was it Paul that called you back? That you guys had a meeting with?
Yep.
Yep. So he reached out to me via LinkedIn. I thought, pretty interesting projects. This is something that is portable, so that if we want to gain some intelligence and metrics and data around where, for example, maybe going up and down Fun Drive, right? How many cars do we get in there day in and day out? How many pedestrians do we get in there day in and day out? Good metric, right? We're always eager to find out more information. This is a good way to collect information. Taste of Orland. We have people, we have counters with our thumbs, and we count who's coming in the gates, right? That's how we sort of ascertain how many people have visited 10,000 on one day, 8,000 on another. Again, since they're portable and mobile, we can pick them up and move them around as necessary. So sort of just a neat idea if we want to start gaining some insight to how many cars come into Village Hall, how many people come in for the state of Illinois, this area, versus how many people come into Village Hall to visit development or finance or BIS or something like that. So I thought it was an interesting opportunity to take a look at different ways of just getting data. Mm-hmm. How many people use our parks in certain locations? You can readily put these up on a pole anywhere, and it's very low power consumption. It uses the cellular signal to transmit data back and forth. And if you ever want to see where are we getting a lot of traffic and why? Why do we get a lot of traffic at certain parks at certain times of day? More of just an analytical tool than it is anything. Yeah. Are we going to make major decisions on it? No. But I thought it'd be a little bit less expensive, to be honest with you. So when I saw your slide, I'm like, whoa. So
How do they power them? What is it?
They either have battery, or you can connect it to a pole that you just put a. Most of our poles, if you notice around the village, do have power on them for lights and things of that nature. So it'd be pretty simple to do.
Yeah,
I thought it was just a neat opportunity to, again, I don't have time to go and always research these things. So I said, this is a good opportunity.
well, what they're talking about doing as far as, all the development with the parks and the baseball fields and stuff like that. I mean, if you came across something like that and you have traffic problems every time you have a tournament or something like that, it'd probably be a great tool to determine where the bottlenecks are and, you know, what you can do about it.
High traffic areas and
Yeah.
with a lot of pedestrian injuries, you know, what does that look like? Where are people crossing the roads that they're getting injured? So it gives a little bit more insight to what we can do to, better signage, slow the traffic down, things of that nature. So there's tens and tens and tens of examples you can use it for. But I thought it was an interesting product. Good to know it's in its infancy, to be honest.
Yeah.
Who would have known? But you know, they may get teeth one day. And
Yeah, it is interesting that the two things that I looked at, San Francisco and Jacksonville, there was a lot of learnings. There was a lot of assumptions about traffic flow that was just flat out wrong. And they didn't really realize it until they actually, there's one thing to do counts, but there's another thing to actually see visually where pedestrian vehicle movement is. And there was the actual study on Jacksonville. There was Jacksonville. There were a number of takeaways that the city was going to use to. Actually, they discontinued a couple projects that were underway in terms of intersection development because they had the wrong assumption in terms of traffic flow, and they were going back to the drawing board more or less to determine, you know, based on these learnings, what they should actually do, if anything, for example.
yeah,
So, I mean,
well, thank
you
you.
know,
That was essentially it's informative.
I've got a couple thoughts on it. I mean, from one, it looks like, you know, it's an IoT platform, right? You know, so we're trying to, you know, use sensors to gather data, and, you know, you mentioned the analytics behind it, and, you know, that's basically what it looks like. You said that the UI is minimal, right? Okay, here's your sensor, here's the data, and here's the percentage of cars, here's the percentage of pedestrians, but it also constantly learns and it constantly retrains itself. So, you know, it's going to see a pattern, and if it's incorrect, it'll kind of learn from that. But I might have a stronger opinion that you do, that I think something like this kind of helps make more informed decisions. You said we may not make serious decisions on it. Well, maybe we do. You know, like you mentioned, you know, seeing traffic patterns through how people walk through Taste of Orland. The same places have been in the same booths pretty much for how many years? But maybe if we arranged them differently, you might get better traction on some of the ones that are less frequently hit. Maybe we see that parking is absolutely crazy for Pioneers games, you know, but now if we rearrange things or move stuff around, maybe we could make parking and getting in and out of the parking lot easier. You know, public safety is a big concern in certain areas, so maybe you do make more informed decisions. And I think, you know, looking at the costs, I'm sitting here looking at this going, okay, how could we even prove this out and do a proof of concept around it? Your first year is going to cost you $28,000 for 10 sensors and the support for it. But then after that first year, those 10 sensors, it's $12,000 a year for the service. So I mean, that's not expensive, but if you put it into context, it's tough to justify this just to prove it out. So we would have to find a problem that we're trying to solve that is costing us more than $28,000 and get 10 sensors and then try and prove it out. That's where you show your benefit. And then maybe even working with Public Works or the police department, finding ways that they can help us fund something like this. I think that would be a good kind of joint venture. You know, let's get the police department involved. Do you see something that's costing you more than $28,000 that we can fix? You know, so that might be, if we want to pursue something like this, head down that road.
And that's 28,000 probably isn't assuming that there won't be any additional consulting fees necessary for it. So
Yeah.
I would estimate it's going to be more than 28,000.
Yeah, I was just looking bare bones minimum,
Yeah.
because I saw like the lease Delivery and installation, setup and calibration, that's your table 1. So that's if you buy 10. If you're going to do it, you might as well buy 10 because it's $12,000 for 2.
Yeah.
So you might as well do 10, right? So, get the most bang for your buck. But yeah, your data service fee is constant. You know how many of these you're going to have. And maybe even do it for 6 months to prove it out. So maybe we only spend $22,000 to try it out. But yeah, if you end up into, okay, now we want to develop a custom UI, or we want to do something different than the data that we can't do by building something with the API calls ourselves, that's where your consulting work is going to come in. Because if we have somebody, like I said, you got some guys fresh out of Sandberg that know how to use RESTful APIs and write a Python script.
Yeah.
They're going to pull the data you need.
Now, again, this is their price list. This is a startup company, and I think they're looking for opportunities, so there might be some latitude here in terms of price. I don't know, didn't really even discuss price in much depth at all with them, but it's clearly a company looking for opportunities, and I think Paul was particularly excited with the possibility of doing something with parks or bike paths, because I'm not sure they have a case study with that, for example.
And we have a lot of bike paths.
Just as an aside, I failed to also note that the way that they identify what's in the picture is they use some open source imaging files. So they're able to determine the difference between a taxi and a regular car, different types of trucks. So it's not just even that it's a truck or a bus. They can go much more granular in terms of the type of vehicle or that kind of thing. So in the case of San Francisco, they're particularly interested in taxi flow through this area, and they're able to gather that information using this technology.
Thank you. Thanks for your research.
Thank you. Yeah, it was good. Any other thoughts? Comments? No. That was great. Thank you. Moving on to last item, 2018-0838, the new business technology survey and the initial findings that we've received from it.
The preliminary.
The preliminary, that's definitely preliminary results. We were working heavily on when we first started meeting, the citizen survey and trying to get that published and trying to get findings from that. And, we received feedback from that, and, we still need to get back to the citizens and tell them what we've learned. We kind of have a draft of that, but we need to finalize it and, find a way that we can get that published. And I have that. Do we have anybody that can write good documents that can actually sound like something we could put in front of us, in front of the residents? I could probably use some help with that.
If you forward that over, I can have my web person take a look.
Yeah, it's kind of a series of bullet points, but I think.
Probably ask the PIO to publish it.
Yeah, I think we're at a point where if somebody looked at it and we have a discussion around it, we could come up with some copy so I'll send that to you, and if we can get somebody maybe before the end of the year just to spend a couple hours on this and we can get it published, I think that'd be a nice thing to do, to show we're listening and, show them what we're going to do for them in the future and what we're working on. But to tie that in, we decided to build the business survey, and I got some input from the group, so I appreciated that. And what happened is we had the first version of it go out starting last week. The village also does business retention surveys when it's time for business licenses to be renewed. So as people are looking to renew their licenses, they send these retention surveys out to find out, what the businesses are thinking about the village, what do they have going on, and aspects of their business. But it does not go deep into technology. So the idea was to create a technology survey. And while I think someone mentioned this in their comments, and it's absolutely correct. Yeah, these questions are a little boring, and these questions are a little basic, but, you know, we don't know what we don't know, so we have to ask. And, you know, we got the initial, you know, survey back, and I had the document here.
Yeah, I sent, as of today, that we've had 20 respondents, so I've sent that over this morning.
Yeah, I only had this showing up in my email for some reason, but I just downloaded it again, and now I have the detail behind it, so that.
These are the public comments. I just figured I'd just give you guys.
So how many businesses did you go out to?
You would know
I think it's anybody that would have a year-end business license renewal.
every
I
business
don't know
that
for
needs a
sure.
business license has received the link to this, as well as the community development one, right?
And the business retention survey is along with it. So they're getting, it's basically an email that has two links in it, one for business retention and one for technology. And I wrote just a short blurb saying, you know, here, we'd like to collect this feedback because we'd like to come back to you and basically do what we did for the residents, you know, tell you, you know, what we're looking to bring to the village, what we're going to do in the near future and what we're in progress on. And here is what you said, you know, based on the results. So
this just went out last week?
this just went out last week. So there's only 15, but
There was
I'll
15
tell you what,
respondents?
15 respondents already, and it went out last week. For
Okay.
business, that's pretty good feedback.
Yeah, given everything they've going.
Sounds
Yeah.
like a lot of people are frustrated with the fact that some of it wasn't working.
Yeah, looked like might be some problems with the survey itself, and we may need
It did
to.
look like the number of responses as the questions went on got smaller and smaller and smaller.
You see that in a lot of surveys, I think, that are relatively long. You get
Yeah.
the drop off, you know.
You gotta keep surveys short,
Yeah. If we would have gave it to them the way it was originally written,
50 questions.
well, no, I think there was like 24 or 25 or something like that. But, well, actually, no, yeah, you're right. There were a lot. But I was just collecting questions, you know, as I could find questions and I was thinking of them, I was just documenting them, and then we had to, you know, trim it down. We trimmed it down to, I think, 17 or 18 questions, which was better. But what we've seen so far is a small percentage would be interested in focus groups around, you know, technology-oriented initiatives, which is good. So if we come up with ideas that we want to actually have focus groups on, that we can possibly get some business people. And
I actually thought that based on the 15 respondents, you had a fair percentage interested in participating in that. I thought it was
Yeah.
better than I would have
yeah,
expected.
30%, yeah.
Yep.
So, you know, looking at businesses as well as the residents, if we decide to have focus groups around initiatives, I think that's something because actually we got a good feedback from the residents as well on that. I'd say it's probably about the same, maybe 20 to 30%, but.
Which
that's
I
pretty
think is outstanding.
Yeah. And then same thing with beta testing new technology offerings. Maybe if we have, you know, future integrations with the Tyler technology stuff and the, you know, asset management or the permit tracking, things like that we want to pilot, you know, before it goes live, that we have businesses that'd be willing to do that. I was surprised to see that almost 20% think that keeping up with technology is not very useful or not at all useful. But I also had to sit back and think, well, what kind of businesses may think that? Well, okay, I went to the shoe repair place right over here the other day. They need a cash register and a calculator. They don't need technology. So, you know, the people that are answering this, you know, it may not necessarily need technology in their business. So I had to kind of take my technology hat off for a second and say, okay, if I'm a small business, how important it is to me.
But I think how many respondents did that? So that was,
80% say that it's somewhat or very important.
but I'm
to
just saying that 20% might be distorted because there were so few people had responded to that one.
Yeah, it was,
All you need is one or two.
yeah, and that's what it is. It's unfortunately, you know, one person said not very and two not at all.
Yeah.
But out of a set of 15, that's,
Yeah.
yeah, that's,
Do we know from those that responded, like the profile of the business, like if it's consumer facing or anything like that.
Yeah, that we don't.
Okay.
I think as the weeks go on and we get a better sampling, like I said, I don't know how many businesses are within the village. But, you know, you start getting 100, 200, 300, I think we had about 300-ish for the resident survey, the tech survey. You get about the same amounts.
Yeah.
I think we have much better data to get, you know.
In retrospect, one of the things that would have been nice to have asked them what type of business they're in.
Yes.
Well, we did pass it around, so everybody.
I know, and I'm with you, I'm just saying in retrospect, as I'm reading it, I'm
Yeah,
thinking,
yeah,
which are these, I wish I would have thought of that, but
And we can add that.
We
later.
can add that in,
We always go back
actually.
in and add it, and we have to add it towards the end because it may skew the numbers a little bit.
Yeah.
Or we'll remove a couple questions and put that one in there. So,
The other surprising question was 80% of the people do their business technology themselves versus outsourcing it, which was one person
Yeah,
said that.
probably smaller businesses.
Yep.
Right. Make a guess, right? So,
Yeah, I was actually thinking about it opposite, you know, that I have a small business, I don't have time to manage this, why don't I just pay somebody to do it for me? But I guess, again, if it's a smaller business, how much technology do you have? Is it two
I work-
PCs and a cash register?
I work with a lot of McDonald's owner-operators, and you would be surprised, you know, they have multi-million-dollar businesses, and when they talk to the help desk, they're the ones crawling under the counter, playing with the cables.
Yes, I've been
It's
there.
surprising. I mean, I think when you own a business, and you're a small business, you do whatever it takes.
No, I used to.
They call us a last resort, believe me.
Yeah. Yeah, they unplugged it and plugged it back in before they called you. Yeah. Well, I used to be an assistant manager.
$75 for a call.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, they don't.
I used to be assistant manager at a Walgreens, and basically it's like you knew the things that you should do before you call the help desk because you know you're going to have to go through them anyway. So you call and you're like, yeah, I already did that. I did that. I did that. Okay, can we move to step 6? Because we talked through this the last time. You know, it was just, I guess that's how I got a job in the help desk. But anyway. So yeah, so more people than I thought do it themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this is the question that threw me way off. Or no, I mean that was good to see that 70% are saying that they'd be willing to use technology rather than do it in person. You know, if we had the ability to do so with the village, and the fact that these, I'm thinking a lot of these are probably definitely smaller businesses that responded because nobody said they had fiber. And we know that, for some of the larger businesses, like you talk to, Horton Group over there, or even, Jack Smith from the Economic Development Board, that, it's like internet is at a premium, and I think you've mentioned the same thing about this area.
Affordable fiber is not here yet.
Yeah.
Some towns it is, but it's not really mainstream here.
Yeah, I mean, WOW has tried to come in and, put in a fiber footprint, not too cost prohibitive.
Yeah.
Talked to Google to try to bring them in here a couple of years ago, and they basically abandoned
You got
putting
AT&T.
fiber out there. Now they're going with line of sight.
Until you get somebody like, one of the big players coming in and just linking in the neighborhood with it, it's
It's Comcast and AT&T.
yeah.
And
And
AT&T's not even fiber.
AT&T still cable, right?
No, AT&T's pretty much just copper.
Oh, it is.
Yeah.
Wow.
They bundle their lines together to increase the bandwidth capabilities. So they may have 6 different pairs of copper coming into your house to give you a full T1 type
Yeah.
scenario.
Too bad I can only get 24 megabit out of them. Yeah.
Yeah, so
That's fast. No.
I have a cottage in Wisconsin that has about 400 people in the town, and I have fiber coming up to my cottage.
yeah. Just shows you, yeah.
And it's just because it's easy to put the infrastructure in there. There's no, they just run the fiber, and you can trench wherever you want, you do whatever you want, and they just know that they're gonna get that piece of the business for the next 50 years or whatever it is. They never have to worry about upgrading it, and they figure the numbers, and it's amazing.
And then, it was almost a 50-50 split between whether, companies are using cloud technologies or not. As we're all in the industry, it's like you talk to, I talk to my clients and they don't think about what a cloud technology really is. Okay, it's like, are you using Office 365? Do you check your email online? Are you, do you use Salesforce? All these simple things that they don't think about. You're leveraging cloud technologies, even though that's, you don't think of it that way. It's what it is, and
More hybrid cloud than it is anything.
right, and that's we learned the hard way at IBM that's trying to go cloud first and everything cloud isn't going to happen, especially like you deal with financial customers. You have to have a hybrid model to succeed, and it took a while to learn that. I'd say about 75 or 50% of them have online presence. Most of them are on-premise technologies versus, cloud hosting. And we had two people that said they actually use a combination of both. A lot of companies that don't use the Village website or our social media to find out what's going on.
They will soon.
Close to, actually, 11 of them say less than once a month, 2 of them once a month, and 1 of them a few times a month.
It looks like they primarily prefer email or text.
Yes, email or text versus, and some people say a mobile application they'd be very likely to
Right,
use as
that's
well.
the third thing. Seems like that's their preference,
Yes.
which means mobile.
Right.
My takeaway.
So when the new website goes in and we have a nice mobile presence on the website versus what we have today, maybe people.
As we
and-
design the website today, we look at it in 3 different fashions. We look at it from a computer, we look at it from a tablet, and we look at it from a phone. So we can see as we make changes or updates how it's going to present to the end user. So what comes up first, how it comes up first, why it comes up first. Today, when I pull in Google Analytics on our website, over 80% of the people who use our website use it from a PC. They don't even use it from a tablet or a phone today.
Right.
It's not inviting. It doesn't
No.
work well.
It doesn't scale. It's not
It doesn't-
responsive at
yeah,
all.
It doesn't
Yeah.
respond, so it doesn't do it.
It was good when it was built.
Well, it was built, 11, 12 years ago.
Right.
So,
And to go to your point, Greg, when your business needs something from the village, how do you make contact? The phone.
Yeah.
In person or email. Not even by the internet. Not one person said the internet. Business licensing looked like it would be something they'd like to see online, and
it's coming.
it's coming. That's good. There's something we can respond and say, hey, you've asked, we're listening, and we're implementing it for you. Paying the water and sewer, it's already there, so that's a good thing.
That's not going to change. It's going to stay
Yeah.
the way it is.
Right.
Paying that online.
And the biggest response was real-time problem reporting,
Yep.
which is one of the other ones that we'll be coming to. And
Hopefully in 3 weeks we'll have that up and running.
I'll be looking forward to that too, because every time it snows, I can take a picture of my street.
We were looking at technology to track the snow plows so that people can have a real-time view of it. It's quite expensive.
Yes.
So we put that one aside, but you'd be able to see the snow routes. You'd be able to see what time your street was plowed, get an estimate of when the snow plow would be coming, and be able to do that all online.
Yeah. But will that track the dead ends and cul-de-sacs and the contractors that you use for those?
Yes.
Nice. So a contractor will be required to have a
Yeah,
beacon?
because we have to understand how much salt they're dropping, what's the rate of the salt that they're dropping.
Okay.
That helps with governmental studies.
Good to know. And it makes them accountable and makes them get out there and get their stuff done for what you're paying them for
Yeah.
in the
There's
time.
there's a huge project around how much salt we use pre-treat the roads, so you can get the salt up easier, so there's less icing. There's a whole science around it.
Yeah,
Just
the
getting into
beet
it.
juice solution to what we put down beforehand, right?
You ever see the 4, 5, 6, 7 lines on the street? That's that beet juice solution. It's a brine solution, and they pre-treat the streets and the parking lots so that when the snowplows do come, the snow doesn't attach to the street. It gives it a layer, a visceral layer between the snow and the street, and allows the snowplows to push it off easier, and then less ice builds up.
And then, so I guess the free-form comments, I think we probably need to take those into consideration and maybe find out and do more testing as far as, what might be wrong with some of these. I don't know who we should address the business license cost with, but, yeah, so I'd say number 7 and number 2. Unfortunately, we probably didn't collect any information as to who was answering these questions, so we can't go back and ask them.
We want to be blind, right?
Yeah. I think in the last one, we asked for the residents, if they were interested in a focus group or interested in having a discussion or having somebody contact, please provide your information, and quite a few people did.
Right.
And that was good. So maybe, that it shouldn't skew the results of the survey, but maybe if we could add that in at the end, if you'd be willing to have, future discussions about your comments, please provide your information. That way we can actually address their concerns, because, some of these we could actually get them on the phone. Okay, how'd you walk through it? What broke for you, and try and get through it.
It's a start.
Yeah. So,
It is a start.
and this is, we're doing things, for the residents and for the businesses that we haven't done before by asking these questions. So I think, we do this next year, maybe we get more responses, and maybe we ask some different questions. We'll see, because if we can show them that we listened and we're doing things, that's what creates the constant form of communication and
That's
constant feedback.
the key to it. I mean, if you don't go back and tell them what you're doing for
Right.
them, they're never going to know.
Never
And
gonna,
that's
keep providing input, right?
the thing I have to do with my clients, is keep on going back to them and saying, we do this for you and do this for you and do this for you, rather than just keep on sending them a bill every month. So
Right. And, the citizen and resident survey, it took us a long time to get through that process. But that's how this stuff goes, right? But, if,
Unfortunately. Government moves at a much smaller, slower rate than what you're probably used to.
a little bit. But yes, but if we can, we can just show we're responsive when we show we're listening, I think this is gonna help, so, that's,
And I'll go back and test those. I have a feeling I have them set that way purposely, but I'll go back and check them, and I'll add the section at the bottom that says, if you'd like to participate, please provide us your information. That's
Right.
it.
yeah, just, yeah, if you would like to be contacted about your comments, please leave your,
Contact information. And
Yeah.
just so you know, both these surveys are on the front page of our existing website today. So if you
Yep.
scroll down the left-hand side, you'll see 2 big buttons.
yes.
So it's sort of hard to miss.
Right. Well, all right. Any other comments, thoughts? Okay, we'll move on then. Anybody have any old business we'd like to bring up, or any new business you'd like to bring tonight to talk about? Anything we didn't make it to the agenda with? No? All right. Well, I said there's a couple things that I discussed. I'll reach out to you guys and make sure we follow up on them. And if there's nothing else, I'll ask for a motion to adjourn.
I move to adjourn.
Second?
second.
And that motion carries. Oh, wait, all in favor of adjourning? Aye. All opposed? All right, we adjourn. Thank you. A little rusty, it's been a while since we had that. Well, the